The small suburban neighborhood was the kind where people waved at each other while mowing their lawns and exchanged polite greetings at the mailbox. The houses, lined in neat rows, all looked alike: brick facades with white picket fences, the occasional barking dog, and children riding bicycles on the sidewalks. This was the life Alex had chosen when he married Sophie 5 years ago. The corporate job in the city came with long hours and frequent travel, but it provided the life they had dreamed of: an elegant house, a new car, and financial security. Yet, as Alex packed his briefcase one Friday morning, an unease he couldn't quite explain settled over him. "Don't forget to water the plants," Sophie called out, her tone light, as she poured herself a cup of coffee in the kitchen. She wore a simple sundress that flowed gracefully as she moved, her hair tied in a loose bun. Alex loved how effortlessly beautiful she looked, but lately her demeanor felt different. "Of course," Alex replied, smiling faintly. He wanted to brush off the feeling gnawing at him, but it lingered. As he backed out of the driveway, he spotted Derek, their next-door neighbor, trimming the hedges. Derek, in his mid-30s, was the kind of man who always seemed to be around, offering to help with household repairs, lending tools, and even watching their dog when they went on vacations. He waved enthusiastically at Alex, his smile wide and friendly. Alex waved back, but couldn't help noticing Derek's gaze shift towards Sophie, who had stepped out onto the porch to see Alex off. Sophie had a predictable daily schedule: morning yoga, grocery shopping in the afternoon, and tending to her garden in the evening. Or at least, that's what Alex thought. On weekends, she'd host book clubs or meet friends for coffee. She seemed content, yet there were moments when Alex felt her slipping away. Her laughter felt forced, her attention divided. It wasn't until a neighbor, Mrs. Clayton, casually mentioned Derek's frequent visits during one of their chats that Alex began to notice the pattern. "You're so lucky, Sophie," Mrs. Clayton had said one evening while Alex was at work. "Not every woman has a neighbor willing to stop by and help out so often." Sophie had laughed it off. "Derek's just a good neighbor, that's all." But Alex couldn't shake the comment. Why was Derek always visiting? What exactly did he help with? One evening, as Alex returned from a business trip, he noticed something strange. The porch light was on, and Sophie's car was in the driveway, but she didn't answer when he called out. He walked into the house, the faint smell of cologne, not his own, lingering in the air. Sophie emerged from the kitchen a few moments later, smiling brightly. "You're home early," she exclaimed, giving him a quick peck on the cheek. "Who were you expecting?" Alex asked lightly, trying to mask the edge in his voice. Sophie's smile faltered for a split second before she laughed. "No one. I was just surprised, that's all." Alex let it go, but as he unpacked his bag later that night, he found himself staring at the porch through their bedroom window. Derek's house was dark, but Alex couldn't shake the feeling that the man was too involved in their lives. The following week, Alex began noticing Derek's car in their driveway more often. At first, it seemed innocent. Sophie claimed he was helping fix the garden fence or carrying heavy boxes. But one day, as Alex reviewed his calendar, he realized Derek's visits always coincided with his absences. He decided to test his theory. "Sophie," Alex said one evening, "I have a meeting in the city tomorrow. I'll be gone all day." "Oh," she said, her tone neutral. "You didn't mention that earlier." "Last minute," he replied casually, watching her reaction closely. The next day, Alex parked his car a block away from the house and waited. As predicted, Derek's car pulled into the driveway less than an hour after Alex left. Alex's heart raced as he watched Derek knock on the door, and Sophie opened it with a warm smile. They stood chatting for a moment before Derek stepped inside. The door closed behind him, leaving Alex to sit in his car, his mind racing with possibilities. Was it innocent? A neighborly visit? Or was there something more? The questions clawed at him, each more sinister than the last. Alex decided he needed proof before confronting Sophie. As he drove away, his hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his mind swirling with doubt, anger, and heartbreak. What was happening in his home while he was away? Alex's unease had grown into an obsession. The once trusting husband now found himself scrutinizing every detail of Sophie's behavior. Even the most mundane actions, her hurried phone calls, unexplained absences, or the way she occasionally checked the window, fed his suspicions. One evening, as they sat down for dinner, Sophie seemed distracted. She toyed with her fork, barely touching the pasta Alex had prepared. "Everything okay?" Alex asked, his tone calm but probing. Sophie blinked, startled out of her thoughts. "Yeah, just tired," she replied, forcing a smile. But Alex knew better. Something was off. Over the next few weeks, Alex's doubts deepened. One day, he overheard Sophie on the phone while she was in the garden. "I can't talk right now," she whispered. "Later." "Okay." When Alex asked who she was speaking to, Sophie brushed it off. "Just a telemarketer," she said, avoiding his gaze. The lies, though subtle, were starting to pile up. Derek's visits became bolder. Alex began to notice his car parked outside their house at odd hours. Early in the morning when Alex was supposed to be at work, or late in the evening when Alex was running errands. One afternoon, while working remotely, Alex decided to test a theory. He told Sophie he was heading into the city for a meeting, but instead parked his car a few streets away and walked back. Hidden behind a neighbor's hedges, Alex waited. It didn't take long. Derek's familiar blue sedan pulled up, and he strode confidently to the front door. Sophie greeted him with a smile, ushering him inside. Alex's heart pounded. Was this proof? Or was he jumping to conclusions? Determined to uncover the truth, Alex began his own quiet investigation. He purchased a set of discrete security cameras and installed them around the house under the guise of upgrading their home security. "I've been hearing about break-ins in the neighborhood," Alex told Sophie one evening as he installed a camera on the front porch. "Better safe than sorry." Sophie nodded, her expression unreadable. "Good idea." Over the next week, Alex monitored the footage religiously. While at work, he accessed the cameras through an app on his phone, scanning for any sign of Derek's visits. It wasn't long before he caught something. On a Wednesday afternoon, Derek arrived again, entering the house with what looked like a bottle of wine. Sophie greeted him, and they disappeared inside for over an hour. Alex couldn't hold back any longer. That weekend, he approached Derek in his driveway under the pretense of borrowing a tool. "Hey, Derek," Alex said, keeping his tone casual. "Got a second?" "Sure, what's up?" Derek replied, wiping his hands on a rag. "I've noticed you've been around a lot lately," Alex said, leaning against the fence. "Helping Sophie out?" Derek hesitated for a fraction of a second, a flicker of something passing over his face before he chuckled. "Yeah, just neighborly stuff? Fixing the fence, moving some furniture. You know how it is?" Alex nodded, forcing a smile. "Thanks for that. Sophie's lucky to have someone around while I'm at work." Derek's grin tightened, but he said nothing more. One evening, Alex decided to confront Sophie more directly. "You and Derek seem to be spending a lot of time together," he said, trying to sound nonchalant. Sophie frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Just an observation," Alex replied. "He's been over almost every day this week." Sophie sighed. "Alex, he's helping me with the garden. I thought you'd be happy someone was pitching in since you're so busy." Her explanation was plausible, but her defensive tone only added to Alex's doubts. The tension reached a peak one evening when Alex reviewed footage from the cameras. He had set one up inside the living room, hidden among the books on the shelf. The recording showed Derek sitting on the couch, leaning in close to Sophie. She appeared animated, gesturing with her hands, but the angle made it impossible to discern the nature of their conversation. Alex's pulse quickened. Was this proof of betrayal, or just another red herring? Determined to get answers, Alex decided to take the day off without telling Sophie. He spent the morning parked in a rental car down the street, waiting for Derek's arrival. When Derek's car finally appeared, Alex followed at a distance, his heart pounding. Derek parked at a small hardware store, and Alex watched as he exited with a bag of supplies. Alex followed him back to the house, parking around the corner. Peeking through the living room window, he saw Sophie and Derek talking animatedly over what appeared to be sketches of their garden. Relief washed over him, until Derek reached out and placed his hand on Sophie's. That evening, Alex sat at the dining table, the tension between him and Sophie palpable. "Is there something you're not telling me?" Alex asked, his voice low but firm. Sophie looked up, startled. "What are you talking about?" "Derek," Alex said, the name hanging heavily in the air. "What's going on between you two?" Sophie's face hardened. "Nothing, Alex. He's been helping with the garden design, that's all. If you don't trust me, it's not about trust, Alex interrupted, though the words felt like a lie. It's about what I see, and what I see doesn't make sense. Sophie stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Then maybe you should ask him yourself, she snapped before storming out of the room. Alex was left sitting alone, staring at the half-empty glass of wine in front of him, his mind swirling with doubt and anger. The tension that had been building for weeks finally erupted one fateful evening. Alex had just returned from work, his mind preoccupied with the footage he'd reviewed earlier that day. The living room camera had caught Derek arriving yet again during Alex's absence, but this time, Sophie had greeted him with a lingering hug. Alex's thoughts were a storm of betrayal and doubt. He decided that tonight he would get the answers he'd been dreading. As Alex entered the house, Sophie was in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared dinner. The normalcy of the scene felt almost mocking. "I need to talk to you," Alex said, his voice clipped. Sophie turned, startled by his tone. "Sure. What's wrong?" Instead of replying, Alex pulled out his phone and played the video he had saved from the security camera. The footage clearly showed Derek entering their home, Sophie greeting him with open arms. Sophie's face went pale as she watched. "Alex, I can explain." "Explain what?" Alex interrupted, his voice rising. "That while I'm out working, you're here with Derek. That you've been lying to me this whole time. It's not what it looks like," Sophie insisted, her eyes brimming with tears. Before she could say more, the doorbell rang. Alex opened the door to find Derek standing there, holding a folder. The sight of him made Alex's blood boil. "Derek," Alex said, his voice dangerously calm. "Perfect timing. Why don't you come in?" Derek hesitated, sensing the hostility in Alex's tone, but he stepped inside. "What's going on?" Derek asked, glancing nervously at Sophie. "That's exactly what I'd like to know," Alex said, closing the door behind him. "You've been here a lot lately, Derek. Care to explain why?" Derek looked at Sophie, who avoided his gaze. "It's not my place to say," he stammered. "Not your place?" Alex snapped. "You've made it your place by being in my house when I'm not here. So, start talking." Sophie finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Alex, please just listen." "Listen to what?" Alex shouted, the dam of his emotions finally breaking. "That you've been sneaking around behind my back? That I've been made a fool in my own home? It's not an affair," Sophie cried. "You have it all wrong." Alex laughed bitterly. "Oh, really? Then explain the hugs, the secret meetings, the way you two look at each other. Make me believe there's an innocent explanation." Derek stepped forward, his hands raised defensively. "Alex, I swear it's not what you think. Sophie asked me to help her with something, but it's not about you. Then what the hell is it about?" Alex demanded, his fists clenched. Sophie took a deep breath, her tears streaming freely now. "I didn't want to tell you because I knew how you'd react. I've been working on a surprise for you, a garden renovation. Derek's been helping me design it. He's a landscape architect." Alex froze, his anger momentarily replaced by confusion. "A garden renovation? That's your big secret?" "Yes," Sophie exclaimed. "I wanted to transform the backyard into something special for our anniversary. That's why he's been here so often. That's why I couldn't tell you. It was supposed to be a surprise." Derek nodded, holding up the folder he had brought. "These are the plans. You can see for yourself." Alex hesitated, his heart pounding as he took the folder and flipped through the pages. Detailed sketches and designs filled each sheet, showing a beautifully landscaped garden with a pergola, a stone pathway, and a small fountain. For a moment, the room was silent except for the rustling of papers. Alex's anger began to ebb, replaced by a crushing wave of guilt. "Sophie," he began, but she cut him off. "You don't trust me, Alex," she said, her voice breaking. "You jump to conclusions without even asking me. Do you know how much that hurts?" Alex looked at her, his heart sinking. "I'm sorry. I didn't know what to think. With everything I saw." "You saw what you wanted to see," Sophie said, wiping her tears. "You let your suspicions get the better of you instead of talking to me." Derek, sensing that his presence was no longer needed, cleared his throat. "I think I should go." Alex nodded, unable to meet his neighbor's eyes. "Derek, I'm sorry." Derek shrugged, his expression a mix of irritation and understanding. Maybe next time, just ask before assuming the worst. He left without another word. As the door closed behind Derek, Alex turned to Sophie. I messed up, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I let my fears get the best of me. I should have trusted you. Sophie crossed her arms, her eyes red and puffy. Trust isn't something you just say. It's something you show. Do you even realize how much your suspicion says about how you see me? About us? Alex reached for her, but she stepped back. I need some time, she said, her voice cold. I can't just forget that you didn't trust me. Not after everything we've been through. Alex sat alone in the living room that night, staring at the folder of garden plans. What he had mistaken for betrayal was, in reality, an act of love, a gift Sophie had been working on for weeks. But the damage had been done. Alex realized that his insecurities had driven a wedge between them, one that might not be easily repaired. As the weight of his actions sank in, he vowed to do whatever it took to earn Sophie's trust back. The question remained, was it too late? The house felt different in the days following the confrontation, quieter, colder, and weighed down by the unspoken tension between Alex and Sophie. Alex spent most of his time replaying the events in his mind. The moment Derek walked into their home, the accusations that had spilled out of him, and the crushing realization that he had been wrong. The garden plans were now spread out on the dining table, a painful reminder of Sophie's intentions and his failure to trust her. Sophie had become distant. She stayed in their bedroom longer in the mornings and went for walks alone in the evenings. When they spoke, it was brief and strained, as though neither knew how to bridge the growing chasm between them. One evening, Alex tried to initiate a conversation. Sophie, can we talk? He asked, his voice tentative. She looked up from the book she was pretending to read. What's there to say? Alex? You didn't trust me. You spied on me. How do we move past that? I made a mistake, Alex admitted. I let my fears get the better of me. I know I hurt you, and I hate myself for it. Sophie sighed, setting the book down. It's not just about you hurting me. It's about what this says about us. If you can't trust me, then what do we have? Her words cut deeper than Alex expected. Meanwhile, Derek had become a pariah in the neighborhood. Gossip spread quickly in their tight-knit community, and whispers of the confrontation reached nearly every household. Some neighbors viewed him with suspicion, while others avoided him entirely. Derek, however, maintained his stance. One afternoon, Alex ran into him at the local hardware store. Hey, Alex said awkwardly, unsure how to approach the man he had wrongfully accused. Derek glanced at him, but didn't smile. Alex, I owe you an apology, Alex began. I shouldn't have jumped to conclusions. I let my insecurities take over, and I put you in an impossible situation. Derek nodded slowly. You did. And honestly, it's going to take time for this to blow over. People talk, and now I'm the guy who visits married women. Alex winced. I'm sorry for that. I really am. If there's anything I can do to fix this. Just fix things with Sophie, Derek interrupted. She deserves better than what she's been through. The comment stung, but Alex knew Derek was right. One evening, Alex found Sophie sitting in the garden, staring at the partially dug-up flower beds. The sight of her there, so still, so contemplative, made his chest tighten. I thought you'd at least finish it, she said without looking at him. Alex sat down beside her. I didn't know if you want me to. Sophie finally turned to him, her expression softening just slightly. I wanted to do this for you. For us. I thought it would be something beautiful we could share. And instead, I ruined it, Alex said, his voice heavy with regret. You didn't just ruin the garden, Alex. You broke something between us. I don't know if it can be fixed. Over the following weeks, Alex threw himself into repairing the garden. He worked tirelessly after hours, determined to complete Sophie's vision. It became his way of showing her that he was willing to put in the effort to make things right, even if it was too late. As he dug trenches and laid stones, Alex reflected on the root of his mistrust. Was it Sophie's actions that had planted the seed of doubt, or his own insecurities? He realized that his fear of losing her had driven him to act irrationally, but in doing so, he had pushed her further away. One night, Sophie came outside to find Alex planting roses beneath the pergola. "You didn't have to do this," she said softly. "I wanted to," Alex replied, wiping sweat from his brow. "It's not enough to say I'm sorry. I needed to show you." Sophie stood silently for a moment before kneeling beside him. Together, they planted the remaining flowers in silence. The confrontation had left its mark on the community. Neighbors no longer waved as warmly as they used to, and Sophie found herself avoiding the stares and whispers at the local market. One day, she ran into Derek's wife, Karen, who had been away during the ordeal. Karen's expression was unreadable as she approached Sophie. "I heard about everything," Karen said. "Derek told me his side. I just wanted to say I believe you." Sophie felt a wave of relief, but also guilt. "Thank you," she murmured. "I wish it hadn't come to this." Karen nodded. "Me too. But maybe now people will think twice before jumping to conclusions." The garden was finally complete, a beautiful and tranquil space filled with blooming flowers, a bubbling fountain, and a cozy seating area beneath the pergola. One evening, Alex and Sophie sat there together, sipping wine as the sun set. "It's beautiful," Sophie said, her voice tinged with sadness. "I hope it could be a fresh start," Alex said. Sophie looked at him, her eyes searching his face. "Fresh starts don't erase the past, Alex, but they can make the future better. I'm willing to try. If you are?" Alex nodded, his heart swelling with hope. "I am, more than anything." As they sat there, surrounded by the garden's beauty, Alex knew their journey wasn't over. The road to rebuilding trust would be long and uncertain, but for the first time in weeks, he felt a glimmer of hope. The weeks that followed felt like the first tentative steps on a fragile bridge. Alex and Sophie's relationship had been tested, strained almost to its breaking point, but beneath the hurt, there was still something worth salvaging. One morning, Alex woke earlier than usual. The sunlight filtered through the curtains, painting soft patterns on the walls. Sophie was still asleep beside him, her features relaxed and peaceful. He hadn't seen her this calm in weeks. He made a decision that day. If they were to move forward, it would require more than apologies or grand gestures. It would demand openness, vulnerability, and patience. Over breakfast, Alex broke the silence. "I've been thinking," he began cautiously, "about us, about everything that happened." Sophie looked up, her expression unreadable. "I don't want to lose you," Alex continued, "but I know I've damaged something important between us. I want us to work on it together. Maybe counseling?" Sophie set her coffee cup down. "I've been thinking about that too," she admitted. "I think it's a good idea." It was a small step, but it felt monumental. Derek and Karen moved out of the neighborhood shortly after. Whether it was because of the gossip or the strain the situation had placed on their lives, Alex never knew for sure. One day, as Alex worked in the garden, Derek stopped by to say goodbye. "Moving already?" Alex asked, straightening up. Derek nodded. "Karen and I need a fresh start. This place has too many memories now." Alex felt a pang of guilt. "I'm sorry for what I put you through." Derek shrugged. "It's done now. Just don't let your fears ruin what you have. Sophie's a good woman. Hold on to her." With that, Derek left, and Alex watched as the moving truck disappeared down the street. Counseling sessions became a cornerstone of their healing. At first, they were awkward, with both Alex and Sophie hesitant to open up fully. But over time, the sessions gave them a safe space to voice their fears, frustrations, and hopes. One evening, during a session, Sophie finally revealed something that had been weighing on her. "I felt so alone, Alex," she confessed. "You were always working, always distracted. The garden wasn't just for you, it was for us. I thought if I created something beautiful, we'd spend more time together." Alex felt a lump in his throat. "I didn't realize I was so focused on providing for us that I forgot to actually be present." The counselor nodded. "Trust isn't just about fidelity. It's about feeling seen, valued, and connected. That's something you both need to work on." The gossip in the neighborhood eventually died down, but the ordeal left its mark. Alex and Sophie kept their interactions with neighbors polite but distant, choosing to focus inward rather than on the opinions of others. At a neighborhood barbecue months later, One of the neighbors approached Alex. "I heard you and Sophie work things out," she said, her tone surprisingly warm. Alex nodded. "We're trying. It's not easy, but it's worth it." The neighbor smiled. "Good for you. Relationships take work. Not everyone's willing to put in the effort." The garden became their sanctuary, a place where they spent quiet evenings together, talking about their days, their dreams, and their fears. One evening, as they sat beneath the pergola, Sophie turned to Alex. "Do you remember the first time we talked about starting a garden?" she asked. Alex smiled faintly. "You said you wanted a space where we could grow something together. I guess I didn't realize how much that meant until now." Sophie reached for his hand. "We're still growing, Alex. It's going to take time, but I believe we can make it." "I believe that too," Alex said, squeezing her hand. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the garden, Alex felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in months. The journey had been painful and messy, but it had also taught him valuable lessons about trust, communication, and the fragility of relationships. Mistakes had been made, but they didn't define him or their future. What mattered was the willingness to learn, to grow, and to fight for the love they had built together. In the quiet of the evening, surrounded by the garden's beauty, Alex realized that while the scars of their ordeal might never fully fade, they could serve as reminders of how far they had come and how much further they could go.